Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call our December meeting to order for the El Dorado Irrigation District. We have two agendas today that we're going to bring to order here in a minute simultaneously. But again, welcome. Thank you for being here. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll get that out of the way first. So we'll call our meeting to order. We have two agendas to adopt. I'd like to adopt the
Actually, we're opening the special and regular
Special and
meeting
regular meeting.
concurrently at 9 a.m. And then I will call the roll call if you would like. Director Veerkamp?
Yes, please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Directors Osborne, Veerkamp, Dwyer, and Day present. Director Anzini absent. General Manager Abercrombie, General Counsel Pulsman, Clerk to the Board Sullivan present.
All right, if you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Please have a seat.
We will move to the special board meeting agenda and for the adoption of the special board meeting agenda.
All right, do we have any public comment on the
We
agenda?
need a first and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll move that we adopt the special meeting agenda.
Second.
Second by, that's all right, I think Alan, Director Day got it, so
That's over.
motion second.
Mark's next.
There you go.
If members of the public would like to address the board at any public comment period during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. This is for the adoption of the special board meeting agenda. Director Veerkamp, it does not look like there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of the special board meeting agenda.
All right, we'll go ahead and vote then on the adoption of the agenda, please.
How do you vote?
And we don't need a roll call yet.
We're doing a roll
We
call
will.
vote on the adoption of the agenda.
Okay.
How do you vote? Division 1,
Aye.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 5, Division 1, 2, 3, and 5, voting aye, motion carries. Now, this is the time for the open comment period for the special board meeting agenda. So for any public comment for items that are not appearing on today's agenda.
Do we have anybody in the audience who would like to speak? Not looking like it. Anybody online that would like to speak?
Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
All right, and we've taken action on the only item on the special agenda, so at this time,
Actually, we have to address action item number 1.
oh, okay. You're right, we've adopted the agenda. Okay, so we have action item number 1. You want to read that item, Ham?
Well, I'd like to adopt the attached resolution making findings and declarings the board's intent to conduct remote teleconference meetings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E due to the ongoing threat of COVID-19.
Thank you, Director Day. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. Got a motion second. Any comment from anybody in the room publicly? Seeing none. Anybody online?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 1 on the special board meeting agenda. Option 1 moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer.
All right, we'll take a roll call vote then.
How do you vote? Division 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
5. Division 1, 2, 3, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, I think we can now adjourn the special meeting.
Yes, at
Agenda?
9:05 a.m.
All right, thank you very much for that. We'll dispense with that. And now we'll get to the regular agenda, correct?
Yes, and prior to the adoption of the regular meeting agenda, I would just like to note for the record that Director Anzini is participating remotely, allowable by the adoption of action item number 1 on the special meeting agenda, and she is now present and will be present the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome, Director Anzini. So we need to then adopt our agenda for our regular scheduled meeting for today. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Anybody in the public wishing to speak on it? No? Jesse, no, huh? Okay. All right, anybody online wishing to speak? Jennifer?
Does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the adoption of the agenda from the regular meeting.
Okay, we'll need a roll call vote, please.
How do you vote Division 1,
Aye.
2? 3,
Aye.
5? 4?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Next up is the nomination and election. Board will hear nominations for and elect a board president and vice president.
Director Anzini,
Yes, I would like to nominate Director Veerkamp as president and Alan Day as vice president.
All right, we have a nomination. Do we have a second to that nomination? Or do we have any?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. Nobody else wants to? Okay, so we'll now take public input on this nomination. Any public wishing to speak? Anybody online wishing to speak?
does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the nomination and election for our board president and vice president. We have a motion on the table to nominate that Veerkamp is president and Day is vice president, moved by Anzini and seconded by Director Dwyer. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you vote Division 1,
Aye.
2,
Aye.
3,
Aye.
5, 4?
Aye.
Divisions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on with our agenda. We now have communications, general manager, employee recognition. Jim?
Good morning, thank you. I have one I'd like to share with the board and the public. The district received an email from Scott, an EID customer, who wrote to compliment the district. He wrote, "I appreciate all your help, along with so many others who support the small niche that the bonsai garden fills in the larger agricultural community. We're planning to continue our bonsai growing operation as long as we're able to. The staff from EID and the county were very helpful during this process. They were always courteous, professional, and trying to find a way for us to meet the various requirements. Nice job, team." So thank you very much for the compliment, and to our employees.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much for that, Jim. I know I was involved in that just for a moment or two, so thanks to staff and everybody for working that through. Really appreciate it. Okay, we will now go on to public comment.
This is public comment for any items not appearing on today's agenda. If members of the public would like to address the board during this meeting, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on today's public comment period.
All right, thank you very much. And just one last check in the audience? No? Okay, very good. We will move on to communications. General Manager Jim.
Nothing to add today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Clerk of the board, Jennifer.
Nothing, thank you.
All right, Board of Directors. Yes, Mr. Dwyer, Director Dwyer.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to take this opportunity at the end of the year
and over the holiday period to thank all of the employees and the management of EID for fulfilling our mission and doing it with style and grace and, of course, safely. So thanks to you all.
Thanks, Director Dwyer.
You stole my thunder, but that's okay. I appreciate all the efforts from the staff and from the management. And we've had some challenges this year, so thank you all, and have a very happy, prosperous New Year, and a happy time with your family at Christmas. The only other thing, from a business side of things, I still going back and forth with people on the development in Sacramento, although it's beginning to wind down a little bit because maybe we can compete with, because we have snow now to deal with instead of, but at any rate, it's still an ongoing question with people, why are we authorizing this? And keep trying to explain to people, it is not our responsibility to approve construction or development. And so it's a difficult thing for people to understand because they think we can just arbitrarily say, no, we're not going to serve it. But one of the things that has come out is finally the people are realizing out of our 62,000 acre feet portfolio, this is going to be about 200 acre feet in total. And so it's a minor amount of water in comparison to the 34 to 37,000 that we use right now. So we have plenty of water, and hopefully this will calm things down.
Just for the record, Director Osborne, you're speaking of the Folsom Heights development, correct?
That's great. Thank you.
Correct, yeah, and I'll just follow up on that. I agree with George. I actually saw some of your conversation on Nextdoor. But, keep a record of that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's really important to emphasize, we're not selling water to Folsom.
Right.
We're just servicing a small niche there that we have to.
Yep. Thank you, Director Osborne and Director Day. Director Anzini, anything? Pat, did you have a go back? Okay.
Thank you very much, President Bierkamp. I appreciate acknowledging that I'm online. I really appreciate the board's indulgence on being able to commute my thoughts virtually. And as Director Dwyer said, and as Director Osborne said, my appreciation goes out to all of our employees who have done a stunning job this year, considering the fact that we've got many irons in the fire. And they have done a wonderful job in providing the community with information and informing them of issues that might pop up in their brain and trying to diffuse the misinformation that's sent out regarding our water. And again, congratulations to the staff for doing a really good year. Again, I appreciate the fact that I can be on virtually. Unfortunately, sometimes, we've been lucky for 3.5 years, and I finally got the bug. So appreciation and good health to everybody, and a happy new year.
Thank you, Director Anzini.
What's the name of the creek that you're sitting by?
Caples Lake Stream or whatever.
Capable Lake Stream. Director Dwyer.
Yes, I just, in line with Director Osborne's comments about public perception and the Folsom Heights situation, I wonder if we might want to take a look over the coming year through our public relations efforts to re-emphasize that we are a customer-owned utility. I know that SMUD has gained a lot of, I won't say respect, but favorable publicity in that the profits are plowed back, profits being, the retained earnings are plowed back into the infrastructure. And I think some of the comments that George is talking about where people said, oh, they're just money grabbing fools and all the money's going into the director's pockets. And I think we should reemphasize that we are a public-owned utility, and all the customers are also owners of our operation.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. I would add as well and echo all of the positive, very positive thoughts and comments about our employees and the year we've had. I think it'll only continue to be more complicated as we move forward, so we have to be diligent and work things through. Secondly, LAFCO held their December meeting December 7th, and we adopted some updated policies. And as I said, I think last meeting, Shiva Frenzen is our new director and hit the ground running very hard and has a very strong priority list now adopted by the board for next year's activities, as well aimed at trying to keep our costs down, which every agency pays into. So we're looking at trying to decrease costs, believe it or not. So we'll see how that goes, but things are going very well at LAFCO, and we'll meet again in January, and that'll be the reorganizational meeting, as the Board of Supervisors will be reappointing folks to LAFCO, so we can't do it until then. And then again, once again, just thanks to everybody and wishing everybody a very, very good holiday and a peaceful time. All right, with that, we will move on to approval of the consent calendar. Anybody wishing to
So moved.
pull any items? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we have a second by Director Dwyer, a motion by Director Osborne. Comment on the motion from anybody in the audience? And seeing none, anybody online, Jennifer?
It does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the the approval of the consent calendar moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Dwyer. Would you like for me to call the vote?
Yes, I would.
How do you vote Division 1?
Aye.
How do you vote Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5? Division 3?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. And now we will move on to, I believe, informational items. Well, that was consent. Action, information items. Item 13, I know there's a good report. We're not going to hear about the squirrels, I hope. The jury's, acorns, the jury's out on that now, for sure, because the last few days and the last week, it's
Even
coming
the
through.
fish got a little too much water this week.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. All right, we have a brief, probably relatively brief early season update for you. So this is our approximately monthly update on the status of the district's water supply portfolio. Oops, excuse me. So this picture that staff's provided for you today is our Kybers Diversion Dam. What we'd like to see, that means water going over the spillway, which means we have excess water available, and as soon as the canal is back online, we'll be taking advantage of that. Next slide, please. Okay, quick summary of the issue. We're wrapping up our canal annual maintenance flume replacement projects. Hopefully end of the year, perhaps early next year. Obviously, this rain has put a little dent in getting the canal back online, but at the same time has provided immense benefits to Jacobson Lake, of which all of our demands east of El Dorado Hills obviously are being met from Jacobson Lake, previously diverted water and now new water entering that reservoir. And then El Dorado Hills is meeting El Dorado Hills demands. Jacobson Lake end of season storage, and this is obviously put together before our very beneficial storms last week. We were trending higher, which is good, and now we're trending even much higher. All of our curtailments have been lifted by the state board, and given just our early season projection of what's currently in storage, where our snowpack is, especially with this past week, we're looking to be in a really good position for 2023 at this point, which is what we like to hear. That's what we're always planning 1 year ahead. I do have some late breaking news, if you will, early season, early numbers for today. We did gain almost 1,000 acre feet in Jacobson Lake over the past week, and about another 150 acre feet per day that we're gaining right now. So fortunately, even though we did get some pretty intense rain, it didn't come down too quickly, so we didn't see a lot of we're worried about. So slow and steady wins the race, which is very helpful. And now that lower snow, it'll come off even slower. So just the right recipe for runoff, and we're doing really healthy, about 80 CFS through the reservoir, or excuse me, through the tunnel this morning. Folsom Reservoir has also gained about another 10% in its storage as of this morning, about 273,000, about 5,000 CFS going into Folsom as well. So both of the larger reservoirs are doing very well, and obviously, as our directors on the east side can attest, Weber Reservoir, like everybody else's yard, is very wet, and that reservoir is also filling quickly. Next slide, please. Okay, so the reason for our early summary assessment of where we are, our project weighing 4 reservoirs are sitting at or actually a little bit higher, specifically Caples Lake as well as Silver Lake, than they typically are this time of year. So nice storm for the fall is putting us in a nice position that when the canal comes back online, we'll be able to release from those reservoirs to ensure a full canal. Although if current trends, we may not need that water, frankly. We have enough water in just natural direct diversion. So we'll continue to watch that as we obviously need a little bit of a drying period to finish up our construction, so maybe we'll make that work. And what we plan to do is as soon as the canal comes back online, we'll be using Hazel Creek Tunnel just to make sure, just to bolster us a little bit, and then we'll let Mother Nature probably mix in. And then if spring seems like it'll get a little drier, we'll probably run Hazel Tunnel again. So stay tuned for next month. We'll have another update for you on its operation, but we definitely do plan to run it early next month. And our Jacobson Lake projection, 1 week old, is already stale, so we're north of 25,000 now. So I'm guessing probably closer to 26,000 by the end of the month. Depends. We do have about a week of dry weather now, but that rain and now snow is going to continue to benefit us. So we'll see how it goes. But that would be my latest projection, is around 26,000.
The unofficial rain gauge in Camino was a little over 10 inches. That's over a quarter of what we normally get in an annual basis. So we're doing well.
Yeah, not a lot of irrigation this week, except for Mother Nature, for sure. So, and then obviously, this is our famous chart here, 2022. We're starting to see a leveling out, and now with our revised projections, we are seeing that inflection where hopefully we'll actually be past our 2021 end of year, 26,000 or so. And that's where we really want to be going into January. You can see those steep climbs, and that's what we're aiming for next month. So starting off the calendar year in a really good position. Next slide, please. Likewise, this isn't a great chart when you look at it, although, as I mentioned, 20,000 acre feet in a week. Folsom is now on that climb, and that's really where we want to be. We want to be approximately within that light blue polygon. That's the 50-year average. So we need to climb, and we're well on our way, and that's where we'll want to be going into early January, around 400,000, and then climb from there. So next slide, please. So we had a dry November, I think, overall. But obviously, we had that first welcome, and now the second week was even more significant rainfall. But importantly, water quality, staff did have some minor challenges, but they were able to address those as far as operations of Reservoir A water treatment plant. And then since this publication on December 8th, another update from NOAA has been issued, looking more and more favorable towards the spring of a neutral condition, and actually a mild El Nino going into fall. So everything is trending in the right direction in terms of long-term water supply forecasting. Next slide, please. Let's see. And obviously, it was actually interesting to look at. A little surprising, frankly. So we had a relatively dry November, but still 19% below 2020. So shows conservation message is still out. People are still there. And, it was a little bit cooler, but no precipitation. And I think, trying to remember, fall of 2020, I think might have been a little bit warmer, but still with very little precipitation, still have that conservation out there. And as requested by the board, we're always looking back at our high demand year of 2013, 25% less than 2013.
Hey, Dan,
yes.
how does, for that 19% less and 25% less, do those figures include the water that we saved by doing the pipeline for the canal?
It does, and so that's one of the
So that could
things-
be a big factor in why those numbers are good.
Exactly. That is a factor, and likely in one of the board meetings in January, we'll be coming to do an update on the main ditch specifically. General Manager Abercrombie has asked us to do that, and we'll be able to show you the portion which we think is attributed to and the losses, the lack of losses through the main ditch. Next slide, please. And next slide is just a graphical representation. We want to try to be on that dotted yellow line. So 2022 is the bright red. You can see very high demand earlier this year. We took an abrupt turn and really, then we're then below last year for much of the year since then, or all of the year since that time. So definitely achieving that conservation. Next slide. As I mentioned, all of our water rights curtailments have been lifted, and Outingdale is back to normal operations. In fact, we even had a little bit too much water at Outingdale last week, and obviously staff working hard on water quality, obviously with the runoff. About a third of that watershed was affected by the Caldor fire, but everything's status quo at this point. Next slide. And then our outreach efforts, it's kind of hard, especially this past week, to talk about drought, but we're obviously long-term, and in the winter, obviously Jesse and Karen are focusing on the indoor efficiency. That's really where we can try to have our best bang for the buck. And then working with our regional partners, because not everybody's as fortunate as we are in terms of water supply status. So, and I think that's it. And this last slide, one of the recently reconstructed flumes affected by the Caldor fire. Any questions?
Right. Yep. Director Anzini, any comments or questions?
I can't hear who was speaking earlier, that's all. No question.
Okay, that was Dan Corcoran. Oh, and myself, sorry. And George.
Dan, what's our snowfall at Caples at the moment? Do you have any idea?
I didn't get a chance to check that pillow this morning. I know Kirkwood, it was about 33 to 38 inches.
Okay.
But I don't think, that didn't include last night. We got a little bit more last night, but a lot of that precip was kind of 5,000. The way that storm spun, it was kind of mid-foothills and didn't quite go over the hill, so.
Oh, is that right?
3-ish feet.
I got a little of it.
Yeah, you got your more than your share, right? So.
All right, Jennifer, is anybody online wishing to comment or ask any questions?
This is public comment period for any comment on information item number 13. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
All right, thank you very much, and nobody inside, thank you. Okay, thank you, Dan. We will move on to our action items.
Are you going to be recusing yourself?
Yes.
Okay, I will take over action item number 14. We will be considering action item number 14. Do we have a first and a second?
Move one.
I'll second. Okay, sorry, Larry. Go ahead.
That's okay.
I was gonna just move it, but that's okay, you guys just can carry on.
We have action item number 14, option 1, moved by Director Osborne, seconded by Director Anzini. Do we have any director comment on action item number 14? Director Veerkamp, you have a comment?
For the record, yes, I will be recusing myself on the vote on this item.
No other additional director comment? Is there any public comment for action item number 14, option 1, moved by Director Osborne and seconded by Director Anzini? I believe we're ready for the vote. How do you vote, Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5?
Aye.
Divisions 1, 2, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Jennifer. We will now move on to item 15, Finance. Finance Director Bandy, are you going to do the presentation? All right, welcome, good morning.
Thank you, good morning. Okay, Good morning, Jamie Bandy, Finance Director, here this morning to present the 2023 through 2024 operating budget and the 2023 to 2027 financial plan. Next slide. Last month, November 14th, Board held a workshop to review the draft 23 and 24 operating budget and the 2023 through 2027 financial plan. Quick overview of summary of issues. Today's presentation will include looking at our year-end projections for this year, 2022, as well as our revenue and expense projections for 23 and 24. Our debt service coverage. We will take a look at the 5-year financial plan as well as our projected cash reserve balances. Next slide. Okay, so looking at our year-end projections, as previously discussed, our total revenues are coming in lower by about just under $5 million. Our major contributors to this include a lower projection for FCC revenue by about $1.3 million. The grant revenue, once again, we did have about $7 million forecasted for 2022 that we did in fact receive in 2021, so that just skews the numbers a bit.
Jamie, I had
yes.
a question about that on the grant revenue of the 7.1 million. If you could clarify on that. To me, it doesn't seem like a shortfall or a lowering of revenue because we still got the money.
We did. When you look at the budget that was adopted for 2022, that $7 million was included in the expected revenue. But because we received that revenue actually in December of 2021, when you look at 22, it just makes it appear that we came up short on our revenues.
Right. So from an accounting standpoint, I understand it. You know, it's like a client pays me a month early in December, 10 grand, but I was expecting it in January. That affects my numbers this year. But in the bottom line, as far as a real, whether it's a real surplus or a real loss, it's not because we still receive the revenue.
That's correct. We did receive the revenue.
Okay, thank you.
And then lastly on there, I did include the property tax revenue that we're projecting to come in a little bit higher at about 1.8, just to sort of offset that $5 million. Looking ahead to our 2023-24 revenue projections, staff projected FCC revenue at $10 million for both 2023 and 2024, and that was based on developer estimates, our projected activity, and any ongoing unanticipated economic uncertainties. Overall, this is about $3.2 million lower than what was forecasted for the 2022 budget. And then again, for looking ahead, our property tax revenue, we are projecting to be about $760,000 higher than what was forecasted for 2022. Just a quick look at this table here. Our rate revenues are projected to increase by about $2 million from the implementation of previously adopted rate adjustments for water, wastewater, and recycled water utilities. And again, on here, if you look at the 2024 proposed budget, these figures do include a proposed rate increase for all 3 utilities, which again, we will discuss in a little more detail later in the presentation. Okay, again, just kind of reviewing what staff's development approach is. Our current model does include annualizing costs. Looking ahead, as I stated last time, staff will be looking at these costs a little bit more closely throughout the year to just make sure that we are staying on track and kind of keeping track of whatever inflation or, really kind of what the economy is doing as we go along. Looking ahead to the 2023 and 24 budget, staff was directed to limit their program budgets to a not more than 6% increase over the adopted 2022 operating budget. The 2023 proposed budget is 6% higher than the 2022 adopted budget, or approximately $3.6 million, and then 2024 proposed budget is 4% higher than 2023. So staff worked diligently in preparing the 2023 and 2024 operating budget. There's a number of challenging financial considerations that presented themselves, obviously connected to cost increases for labor, materials, services, the continuing need to fund the CIP, and then, as I just mentioned, the lower projections of the FCC revenue. Looking first individually at our personnel budget, overall the decrease to personnel is about 11% or $3.7 million. Our gross wages are projected to increase while the benefits are projected to decrease. I just want to remind the board as well as the public once again that our 2022 adopted budget did include a 2% cost of living increase. However, at the time, labor negotiations were still going on. When those concluded, the result was a 6% wage adjustment, which then resulted in an additional 4% than what was originally budgeted. For 2023, there is a 5% cost of living increase included in the wages. Our capitalized labor offsets for 2023 are projected to be about $6.36 million, which also includes about $1.1 million for the Hanson upgrade and the multiple staff that is working on that. So effectively, this offset does decrease the operating budget by about $822,000. And then lastly, looking at our PERS contribution, the $6 million decrease in the PERS contribution is attributed to the payoff of the unfunded accrued liability, or UAL, with the pension bond issuance earlier this year. And it is important to note here that the costs related to that bond are reflected in the debt service. And again, we'll look at that a little bit later as well. So looking at materials and
Bandy, before you move on, under personnel cost, I think there's buried deep into the details is an important point. And hats off to Jose and our HR folks for renegotiating our insurance carrier, even though it's very small dollars. And now our insurance includes the employee assistance program, so it's not a separate line item. So I just wanted to bring that out, you know, that if you take care of the small numbers as well as the big numbers, it all accumulates to help our bottom line. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see you back in the corner there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jose.
Okay, so again, looking at our materials and services, staff is projecting an overall increase of about 5% or just under $3.4 million. Again, the major contributors are shown on the slide before you. Another thing just to point out, as I did last time, our tank recoding line item is beginning in 2023. We are going to be looking at that individually. Prior to this, it was included in the repair services line. Next slide, please. Go ahead, next slide again, please. Taking a look here, this is just our employee benefits by type breakout. To Director Dwyer's earlier point, you can see here the employee assistance program, so kind of number 2 there, footnote. That's where we are highlighting that the new life insurance carrier will also be providing the EAP services at no additional cost. In addition to this, the overall 2023 proposed budget is about $5.4 million less than the 2022 benefits budget. Again, on here you'll see the decrease to the PERS for the payoff of the UAL pension. And then the other factors included on here are about a $299,000 increase to the district-paid portion of our employee health insurance premiums, and a $181,000 increase in the retiree health insurance paid by the district. Next slide. I will highlight our tank recoating schedule just briefly. Once again, our steel tanks must be recoated approximately every 15 years, depending on operating conditions. However, even this timing may not be adequate given tank design and operating conditions. In addition to that, our deferred maintenance has significantly increased the costs. Unfortunately, the district's financial plan shows that rate revenue is not capable of maintaining a 15-year recoating schedule at this time. However, staff has revised the schedule to include a recoating that includes fewer tanks per year to help avoid further deterioration of this critical asset until sufficient funding can be allocated on an ongoing basis. Next slide, please. This was the original 15-year schedule. You'll notice just there at the very bottom of the graph, overall is about a $30 million cost for a 5-year period. Next slide. The revised schedule, which includes about 1 to 1.5 tanks per year, totals about $14.6 million in a 5-year period. Next slide.
I understand the need to do that, to reduce the impact, our capital expenditures. We've done a couple of things to bring those capital expenditures down to lessen the immediate impact on the ratepayers. But their deferred maintenance is not a good thing because we'll end up paying for it eventually. I understand the need to do this, I just don't like it.
I think it's a very appropriate comment, because you pay me now or pay me maybe a lot later, especially with the way inflationary numbers have been, so. I want to make sure and check with Director Anzini. You're watching forward to make sure if she's got any comments or questions. Jen? Okay.
Thank you. I do have a comment. I appreciate Director Dwyer's comments regarding the tank recoating. It is correct, when you look at the capital outlay of such a high capacity infrastructure that EID has, the tank part is very important for our customers. If anybody looks at what we're doing here, it's important that we maintain our infrastructure so that the customers are getting a safe product. And as Director Veerkamp said, pay me now or pay me a lot later. And it's important deferred maintenance not be pushed off very often, especially with our infrastructure. Thank you.
Yeah, once you lose that tank, then you're going to be into it potentially for a heck of a lot more. Jim, you fearful of this move?
Oh, yes, what was it, tank 7, 6 that we were doing, and I think some of the board members went out there. You can repaint it for a couple $1 million, but once you go in there and it's deferred, all of a sudden you increase that by $1 million or $2 million in capital asset replacement because the girders and beams are all rusted and deteriorated. So, Dan, do you maybe a quick comment on that?
Sorry, Jim, that was tank 2 that we went to visit, but
Yep.
you will see in the CIP, unfortunately, tank 6 is going to be very similar. And so, unfortunately, that's going to require a significant amount of repair. So for the 5-year plan for the near term, we've had to reduce it. Like you said, we don't like it, but our goal fully is to get back on that schedule to get out of this significant rehabilitation, try to get back to the recoating from year 6 and on. And so there's now a plan all together, which you'll see all the way through a 25-year plan to get us back on a sustained investment to get out of this cycle.
Yeah, Director Dwyer?
And Dan, just to drive the point home, the footnote in the financials say that our material and service expenses increased about 21% over last year, due primarily to inflation of contractor cost and material cost. And that's not going to get better. So the longer we defer this maintenance, the more it's going to cost us, not only in more complex repairs, but also increased costs because of inflation. So it's...
Absolutely agree. And from an operations standpoint, also increases the risk of reliability of a very, like Director Anzini was saying, President Anzini, a very important hub of storage of water. So thank you for your input.
All right.
Okay, this chart here is just a brief overview of our debt service coverage. As I highlighted last time, the district does project that it will meet or exceed the 1.25 times coverage bond covenant requirement in both 2023 and 2024. Next slide, please. And next. Okay, so just looking again really quickly, the objectives of a 5-year financial plan. Quickly, it's to generate adequate revenues to fund our operating costs, pay our debt, meet debt covenants, maintain adequate reserves. We want to maintain acceptable service and reliability levels for ratepayers. We want to avoid customer rate shock through the use of annual rate adjustments. Maintain strong credit ratings so that we can obtain better interest rates when we are issuing debt. Maintain CIP funding levels to replace critical assets timely and to avoid failures while also providing safe and reliable service to our customers. And lastly, to maintain strong debt coverage ratios. Next slide. Okay, so the current 2021 through 2025 financial plan includes rates that were adopted following a cost of service study and a Proposition 218 process. The current rates for water and recycled water include a 5% rate increase each year in 2021 through 2025. While current rates for wastewater did not increase in 2022, there is a current planned increase of 1% in 2023 and 24, and a 3% increase in 2025. Just want to highlight the implementation of the rates is important to help produce funds for replacing our aging infrastructure, as we just discussed with the tanks, and maintaining debt coverage as required by our bond covenants. Next slide. Again, as we have discussed in great length, staff was faced with a number of challenges preparing the 2023-2027 financial plan. Developing the plan with the current rate assumptions, projected rising costs, as well as the projected decreases to the FCC revenue, resulted in a projection of low debt service coverage and low cash reserves beginning in 2025. In an effort to collectively combat this issue, staff made many cuts and deferrals to the operating budget, as well as reducing planned CIP expenditures. Next slide. Looking at our FCC revenue, the current forecast includes a projection of $10 million in each year for 2023 through 2026. The proposed forecast for 2023 through 2027, again, based on developer estimates and our projected activity, includes projections of $10 million, again, for 23 and 24. And then the projections begin to decrease to $6.5 million in 2025 and 2026, and further decreasing to about $5 million in 2027. So overall, the current plan forecasted approximately $38 million in FCC revenue over the 5-year period, while the proposed plan forecasts roughly $15 million less than that over the next 5-year period. Okay, considering the unanticipated inflation that we've experienced this year, the proposed 5-year plan does adjust the CPI increases up slightly from what was forecasted in the current plan. As you can see here, illustrated before you, the proposed projections include a not to exceed 6% increase in 2023, 5% in 2024, 3% in 2025, and then a 2% in 2026 and 27. So the current plan forecasted lower increases in each year of the plan. All right, staff evaluated all areas of our financial plan, including our potential future debt financing. The current plan included a $1 million bond issuance in 2025. However, the proposed plan today, what did I say? What? Sure. I'm not sure that's going to get us very far. Excuse me. Rather, $100 million bond issuance in 2025. The projected financial plan, however, we are looking at breaking that up into 2 separate issuances based on the schedules of the projects that are to be included in it, as well as to reduce debt debt payments between 2024 and 2026. So the proposed plan includes a $50 million bond issuance in 2024 to provide funding for projects such as the Sly Park intertie replacement, Flume 45 replacement, as well as our water storage tanks. Then a separate $60 million bond issuance is projected in 2027 for projects such as the Silver Lake Dam replacement, Flume 48, and then as well as ongoing water treatment plant improvements. So the next few charts that we have in the slides illustrate the district's existing outstanding debt through 2025. Next slide. The projected outstanding debt through 2027, and then lastly, the annual debt service payments. I'd like to highlight on here the red portion in the later years is the estimated amount for the 2024 bond. What we currently have estimated in here is a 4% interest rate on those. Okay. All right, so as noted throughout the evaluation and preparation of the financial plan, the existing cost of service rates do not generate sufficient revenues to cover inflation costs on the operating budget, nor do they generate enough cash flow to fund pay-as-you-go capital construction projects while maintaining adequate reserves. Efforts to cut operating expenses, defer maintenance, cut our CIP projects, and adjusting the proposed bond issuance proved not to be enough. Even with these efforts, the proposed plan shows a need for at least an 8% increase for water and recycled water and a 5% increase for wastewater in years 2024, 25, and 26, followed by a 5% and 3% respectively, increase respectively in 2027. I want to highlight here that the existing cost of service study for 2021 through 25 forecasted an increase of 5% for water and recycled water and a 0 to 3% for wastewater. Therefore, the proposed plan today includes an additional increase of 3% or less for each utility. In response to this situation, the district is planning to conduct another cost of service study during 2023 to cover higher operating costs and to increase funding to our capital replacement. Looking ahead here, this one's fine. So this is looking at our 5-year forecast. The next several slides graphically illustrate the 5-year forecast, looking at water and wastewater utilities only, and then we will look at the district as a whole. So this first slide here is for our water utility only. All of the cuts and projections are included in this slide. The only exception here is I first have shown what this looks like if we do not raise rates, and we keep this at the current cost of study rates and then extended past 2025. Next slide, please. And then here's the same slide, but showing what that would look like with the proposed rate increases for water. Okay, so, and then this is a new slide from the workshop. What I wanted to show here is just a regional comparison for the water bills. So if you look at the two items with the downward pointing arrows, the first one is our EID current rates for 2023. And then next to that is what it would look like with our proposed rate increases for 2024. And you can see there we're, the lower end towards the middle in terms of where we compare to other agencies on the water bills. This is our wastewater only utility forecast again, first looking at what that looks like with the existing rates. And then looking at it again with the proposed rate increases. Excuse me, and then once again, just looking at a comparison with our other agencies for our wastewater, with our wastewater bills. You can see on this graph here, anything to the right of that green dotted line, those include the tertiary treatment plants in comparison to the secondary. And again, if you look at EID's current rates as well as the proposed rates for 2024, we are still at the lower level of how we compare to other agencies. And then once again, looking at this graph, this does include for the total district, again, what the current existing rates are extended beyond 25. And then the next slide shows our projections with the proposed rate increases. And then we've added one more graphic here just to kind of talk about what do these rate increases mean? You know, we talk in percentages, but what does that really mean to the average customer, and what does that look like on their bills? So you can see we have it broken out with water or wastewater separately. Looking at 2023 with the existing rate increases for 5% for water and 1% for wastewater, the 5% equates to a total of about $6.40 bi-monthly on their water bill. That 1% rate increase for wastewater correlates to about $1.35 bi-monthly. And then as you can see, as we look forward, if you look at the projections for 24, for wastewater, a 5% increase is about $6.76 bi-monthly.
So that's $3 a month.
$3 a month, yes, sir.
Three-ish.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next slide. So the final slides in today's presentation include the district's debt service coverage in addition to the overall cash balances. For comparison purposes, again, this slide includes our currently adopted rates. If you do look at 2025, the debt service coverage, all the way at the very bottom of this chart, becomes very thin, barely meeting the minimum requirement. Next slide. This slide includes the proposed rate increases, resulting in stronger debt service coverage.
And before we leave this slide, I'd like just to point out to the board, and it's hard to read on there, but if you blow up the document on your laptop, look at the senior debt service coverage at 2.6. That's kind of the AWWA standard for medium-sized utilities, and it drops all the way down to 1.7, and then 1.8, and hopefully on the proposed one, and we start rebuilding it back up. So, I mean, that's a critical number in my mind that we need to pay attention to. Thank you. Oh, Moody's as well. Thank you.
Next slide, Jen, go ahead. Cross through these. This is just the water utility and the wastewater only utility. So this completes today's presentation. The board options in front of you today are option 1, adopt the 2023 through 2024 operating budget and 2023 through 2027 financial plan, subject to board-approved cost of service study in 2023. Option 2, take another action as directed by the board, or option 3, take no action at all. And staff recommends option 1.
Move
Director
one.
Anzini has her hand up.
Yeah, hang on a second, George. Yes, please.
Yes. I move option 1.
Oh,
That's all right. I'll
ladies first,
second.
George. We have a motion and a second. I'd like to maybe throw a comment. George, I'm sorry. With your.
No, just a couple comments. Number one, I forgot to mention in the director's comment period, I want to thank the troops for another safe year. It has a huge impact on our workers' comp bill, irrespective of the damage it does to families and stuff when somebody is severely injured. So thank you very much, and press on. We do have some very, very dangerous operations that we endeavor in, so just thanks a bunch. Now, back to the budget, which the workers' comp affects the budget, but anyway. I've had a lot of people talk to me about inflation, and I said it had a huge impact on our operations because we've had to curtail some repairs that we normally would have done. I would like to ask that in our waterfront, just an example of what I've told people, we had to raise our fuel bill by $275,000. And they look at me and I said, when you go to the gas pump or the diesel pump, our bills are affected just exactly the same way that yours are. Now, and it is not just that, it's chemicals and pipe and everything else. And I myself use a fitting, a T that was 40 cents is now $1.15, a PVC fitting. Everything we do is expensive. And this, a 9% rate increase, a 9% inflationary increase, doesn't even reflect what the real costs are to the district. There's built into it, plus our labor costs have gone up, our contract costs are gone up. Anyway, I just think we need to start educating people that this 9% doesn't really reflect what it costs the district to run its operation. And so you throw that into the hopper, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Director Osborne. Director Dwyer, Director Day, any comments?
Yes, I think it's important for us to make it very clear that those proposed rate increases are our best estimates of what's needed at a minimum to maintain our cash balance and be solvent and be able to continue operation. But that is our estimate, and we're proposing in this motion to have those validated by a cost of service study by an outside third party.
Director Anzini?
Yes, as usual, Director Dwyer takes the words right out of my mouth. I think it's really important that the cost of services study be done as it did 4 years ago when he and I both came on. Ratepayers need to know how it's estimated, and a study needs to confirm that this is what we need to do. It allows for full transparency. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Anzini. Director Day?
Yeah, I'm going to be contrarian because I'm really uncomfortable with the direction this is taking and where we're going with this. You know, in particular on the sewer side, those rate increases, don't agree with. I'm uncomfortable with them. I know we're not approving rate increases today, but again, this is the first step. And our debt service ratios are very high on the sewer side, and we could afford for them to come down. We have good reserves there. Something that wasn't emphasized in today's presentation was the cumulative compounded effect of these possible rate increases, nearly 40%. That's huge. So yeah, $5 here, $6 there, or $10 there on a monthly or bi-monthly bill, but then add those up over the 5 years and 40%, that's huge, and that's going to hurt our ratepayers a lot. I think there's things that we could do, as we've shown even in this coming year's budget, of not forever deferring things, but slowing things down a little bit, you know, accomplishing things over 6 years instead of 5. We still get things done. It just takes a little longer. There's already indications on the contracting side that things are softening. They're not as insane as they were last year. You know, it's the fine line of whether we don't want to go into a recession, but we certainly need things to cool off. And I think there are some indications that might be happening. So I will continue to push back. I hope there'd be a little more pushback from the rest of the board about those 5% and 8% rate increases and the 40% compounded rate increases and the effect that will have on our ratepayers. And we're losing people already. You know, talk about the affordability of El Dorado County, and between homeowners insurance, fire insurance, PG&E bills, EID bills, it's getting harder and harder for folks to live here. It's anecdotal, but I know quite a few people that are retiring now, and they're leaving El Dorado County because of those costs. In their retirement, they can't afford them. Young families, unless they already had a house in the Bay Area, can't afford to buy a house here and pay all these high overhead operating expenses of PG&E and homeowners insurance if they can get it, and then EID bills, which are, again, we're looking at another 40% rate increase on top of previous big rate increases. So this is, I think we can be creative on slowing spending down a little bit, still accomplishing our long-term goals, and working within the pressures of and minimizing the effects that it has on our ratepayers. So again, I'm not supportive of where this is headed. Thank you.
Yeah, Director Day, thank you for those comments. Director Dwyer?
Yes, I'd like to say, I think that kind of thinking, Director Day, is what got us into this position to begin with. Let's stretch our maintenance period out from 6 years to 10 years, or let's extend those projects, which, as we pointed out, end up costing the ratepayers more, way more in the future. I also think it's unfair to characterize a 40% increase in the compounding because the dollar amounts are not as striking as you portrayed. So while I think we are all very, very cognizant and concerned about our ratepayers and the affordability of us providing our services, I also think we need to keep focused on our mission, which is to provide that dependable, safe water and sewer to our customers. And by pushing things out, I think we take a great risk at not being able to fulfill that mission.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. Anything final from Director Anzini? Okay, and I would just like to, I think all the comments are very appropriate. Unfortunately, I think we're in a state that we're not getting a whole lot of support on some of these cost increases, and that's what's driving people away. Also, you know, being a long-term El Dorado County resident, seen a few, George, you too. And again, bringing it back to us here at EID, we have to do the best that we can within those parameters. And some of those, again, are pretty much out of our control, but we need to advocate and do the things that we can at the state level to try to keep those costs down, which relates to regulation and so forth, and it makes it very difficult to operate. The other thing there may be opportunity, and I know growth is an ugly word in El Dorado County, but without at least a nominal amount, then our ratepayers end up paying the increased costs for that. So we have to have the ability to pass some of that on to in some other areas. How we do that, it's very difficult, but there are some possibilities, and I don't know if that's looking more at our spheres and seeing what infrastructure could be put in. It's very costly, but could generate some revenue. The county as well, it's very difficult to get anything approved. And again, I'm not an advocate for a lot of growth, but in the right place, the right time, and to spread the cost of these things out, then it doesn't all come to the ratepayer. Otherwise, it does. So with that, I think we had a motion and a second. Any public comment?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. And since this is such an important topic, not that not all of them are, I just want to go over, if you're participating by phone, you just do that *9 to raise your hand, and then *6 to mute or unmute. If you'd like to raise your hand and you're participating via the computer, you just hover there to the bottom of the screen. It'll have a raise your hand button. You click on that. It'll notify us on this side, and then it'll allow you to speak. Again, raise your hand down at the bottom via computer and a *9 on your telephone. President Veerkamp, it does not look like there are any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 15. Option 1, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Osborne. Would you like for me to call for the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you vote? Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5?
No.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, and 4 voting aye. Division 5 voting no. Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jamie. Director Osborne, I believe, has a
I just to make a comment, in deference to Mr. The representative from Division 5, lives in more of a suburban area. Most of my people that want to stay rural, there's a cost to stay in rural. Because in his area, you might have 20 homes on a half a mile of pipe. And in my area, you might have 5. The pipe costs the same, it costs the same to install it, costs the same thing to maintain it, everything else. So there's a definite cost to remaining a rural environment that most people, I think, from Ponderosa Road east, want to maintain.
So we don't get caught in the back and forth, we'll keep those comments before we approve the item. Thank you, George. Item 16, finance.
For item 16, we actually do not have a presentation. The reason why this is on the action as opposed to consent calendar is the appropriations limit cannot be adopted
Without being
until after the budget is adopted. So staff would like to move right to the board consideration.
Okay, action. Do we have a motion for approval? Appropriations,
Yeah, if you read through it, it's not as horrible as it sounds.
right.
As, so I'll move one.
Thank you, Director Day. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. Any comments from board members? I'll make sure that.
And I think,
Lori-
did we make it through 2022 without Tony, a presentation? No? Oh, that's right, when we did the auditing, yes.
I would a motion second. Doesn't look like any comment. How about public, anybody online?
This is the public comment period for action item number 16, option 1, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you vote? Division 1,
Aye.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 5,
Aye.
Division 3,
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. We're now moving on to item 17, operations. Good morning.
Good morning, Vice President Camp, members of the board, Tracy Crane, wastewater recycle water operations manager.
It's President
Well, that's
Camp
right.
now.
You can call me anything.
Just give me a bedtime, Tracy.
President.
Just don't call me late for dinner, 'cause
Yeah.
I'm hungry
My
sometimes.
apologies. Here to talk about a potential change order for our wastewater sludge hauling and disposal services. Next slide. So previous board action, November 9th, 2020, the board awarded a contract to Senegro West for sludge hauling and disposal and authorized the general manager to extend that contract for up to 2 additional single-year periods, and this item would pertain to the second and final extension of that. So the current hauling contract expires on December 31st, and a change order is necessary to cover additional costs that have been added specifically for the yard tractor rental at each facility and CPI inflationary adjustment. The contractor supplies 2 of these yard goats, one at El Dorado Hills facility, one at the Deer Creek facility, and they're used to move the trailers around as they're filled and then when they come and haul them. And it's important to note that both the contractor and plant staff utilize these tractors. This summer, we were notified by the contractor that due to California Air Quality Resource Board restrictions, that both of these tractors had to be replaced with CARB-compliant tractors. So finance staff was negotiating with the contractor as far as that goes for to cover those rental costs and the CPI adjustment. And it should be noted that with those additional costs, our contract with this, for this 3rd year, would still be below the second place bidder when we bid this, and below the current market rate, which is around $80 a wet ton. Next slide. So we produce about 100 wet tons that require disposal each year, and as I said, so the trucks need to be replaced and to the air quality board, and we've made arrangements to rent them for the next year. And during that time, we'll look at whether the district should purchase. There are some issues regarding both the contractor and district staff, and we'll have to work through with legal and purchasing to see if it's the right plan to purchase these in the future.
Tracy, when you say lease them from a third party, not the contractor, or
Yeah,
lease
so
them from the contractor?
for the next year, it will be leased from the contractor. The contractor's supplying them and we're paying the rental fees. And in the future, we'll look to see if that's still the best way to go. Slide, please. So therefore, the board options are to award the change order for the $99,134 for sludge hauling at both, for 2023 at both Deer Creek and El Dorado Hills. Option 2, take other action. Option 3, take no action. And our recommendation is option 1.
All right, thank you very much. Questions of our presentation? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move
I'll
one,
move option 1.
Director Dwyer,
two.
second. Okay. Public comment or questions or comments from Director Anzini online?
None for me.
All right, thank you, Lori.
This is the time that any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 17, option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Osborne.
And we can send the increase to CARB, right?
President Camp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. Would you like for me to call the vote?
Yes, please.
How do you vote, Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5?
Aye.
Division 3?
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Item 18, engineering. Good morning.
Good morning. John Money, Senior Civil Engineer. I'm here this morning to discuss possible award of a construction contract for the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant blower replacement project. So this project is included in the most recently adopted CIP. Previously, it's also been identified on a previous energy audit we did for the Deer Creek plant a couple years back. And then also it kind of reared its head while we were replacing the SCADA equipment on our recent upgrades at the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant to give us a bit more control over our processes and some flexibility on how we operate the plant there. Next slide. So some of the issues, the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant has 4 blower units that have actually reached the end of their useful life. At the time they were current technology, but they've been since kind of outdated by new turbo blowers. This project will replace 2 of those. It'll combine 2 into a single dual core high efficiency turbo blower. Excuse me. Next slide. So
We're gonna replace existing 4 with 2.
Not quite. We're going to replace 2 of the existing 4. So we'll have 1 combined unit and 2 of the older to provide some redundancy in the process. So on the next slide, there'll be a picture of that. But just some additional background. So the blower units, what they do is they supply forced air into the aeration basin. Basically, that agitates the mixed liquor, and then more importantly, it provides oxygen to the microorganisms that are basically breaking down the waste in the waste stream. There's a picture of the 4 blowers. So the far 2 on the right are the ones that are being replaced. One of those is currently failed. So we'll be using the parts on those 2 to help limp the other 2 along until we get to another project. Go ahead, next slide. So here's kind of a schematic again of what we are, how we're combining those two units. The two on the right are the two that we are replacing. So we're going to plumb the inlet and outlet airflow into a single unit. Eventually, in probably the next 5-7 years, we'd like to do the same for the remaining two as our budget allows. The new turbo blowers have a much wider range. So they work in tandem within that single unit. There's two cores. That allows our plant staff to really tune in to what the optimum airflow is within those aeration basins. So that gives us a lot more flexibility, as I kind of alluded to earlier, and then also it gives us they're much more efficient. So we're expecting about $50,000 a year in annual energy savings once we bring that online. Associated with the project, there's also a bit of electrical work, getting that plumbed into our existing electrical system. And then also a little bit of SCADA work so that it's fully automated now that we've got that upgrade at the plant. As far as the construction contract goes, we bid the project in October. We had 11 contractors attend the pre-bid meeting, which is, I think, the most since I've been at the district, which is a good sign. Ultimately, we received 4 bids. The top 3 bids or the lowest 3 bids were within about 5% of each other. So all of the bids exceeded the engineer's estimate of $450,000. I know this has been the topic of the day. So we did, our design engineer did reach out to a couple of contractors and then also reviewed the bids, and the majority of the cost overrun is from the increased price of stainless steel piping. You saw that additional piping coming into the manifold, and the electrical subcontractor costs. So just some additional background. So we had a conversation with Carollo on a wastewater treatment plant they did up in Arcata, and they saw a 40% increase in electrical costs from the beginning of the year to the time they bid the project, and that was midsummer, I believe. So again, these costs are going up. Hopefully they'll cool, but we don't see them going down in the foreseeable future. Oh, you're good. The last bullet there, again, it was that the lowest 3 bids within 5%. One of the bidders in that 5% would have gone with a lower electrical contractor, which would have actually brought those 3 prices within about 2%. So we feel really comfortable that that's a market bid price, despite it being a little bit elevated. Staff internally, our environmental staff has reviewed the project and determined that it qualifies for a Class 1 CEQA categorical exemption. And so pending board approval, they will be filing a notice of exemption with the county clerk. Next slide. Total project funding. So we are asking for a construction contract of $558,000 for construction, $50,000 for construction engineering support from our design engineer, Hurd Engineering, $40,000 in capitalized labor, $65,000 project contingency for a total funding request of $713,000. So option 1 is to award a contract to Siblon Reed in the not-to-exceed amount of $558,000 for construction of the Deer Creek wastewater treatment plant blower replacement project, and authorize additional funding of $50,000 for construction engineering support, $40,000 for capitalized labor, $65,000 for project contingency, and a total funding request of $713,000. Staff's recommending option 1. And with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Right. Comments or questions, staff? Okay, all right, I will entertain a motion on this item then.
I'll move option 1.
Thank you, Director Dwyer. We have a second. Second. Director Osborne is a second. All right,
Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on action item number 18? Option 1, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Osborne. President Veerkamp, it does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak. Would you like for me to call the vote?
yes, ma'am.
How do you vote? Division 1?
Aye.
Division 2?
Aye.
Division 3? Oh, I'm sorry, Division 4,
Aye.
5,
Aye.
Division 3.
Aye.
Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries unanimously. Actually, I'm going to have to step away for a moment, and Allison's going to take over for me. Allison? Really, that is fake.
I would like to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment before our esteemed HR director. This will be the last board meeting that a very, very special person in this district is leaving at the end of the month. She's always bright and cheery and helpful and answers any dumb questions I have. And I cannot express my gratitude to Allison for her years of service to the district and to me personally for answering my dumbass questions. So anyway, good luck in your retirement. Hope to see you in and around the neighborhood once in a while, and good luck.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you guys got her to come up here because not going to be able to make the luncheon, but you are an ultimate pros pro. Always very knowledgeable, always very helpful, always very friendly. So I have appreciated all the help you've provided me over the years, so thank you.
Thank you, Director Day. Director Anzini, hang on there, Pat, I'll get to you. Does she have anything to say?
Yes. I do have something to say. Allison, I know that I've only been on this board for 4 years, but you've always been acted professionally, and I appreciate all your efforts in making sure board members do the right thing. And thank you.
We do have a little comment from Jose, if we could.
Okay, hang on, Jose, Director Dwyer, did you want to?
Right.
Okay, you're good, okay. All right,
Right.
Jose, please.
Good morning. Thank you. Jose Perez, HR Director, President Bierkamp. Appreciate the kind words, truly earned by Allison. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of kind of history leading up to this momentous moment. Allison is retiring at the end of the month, so we really do appreciate having a little bit of time here to
Absolutely.
recognize Allison's 14-plus years of service. She's been, as spoken here, the consummate professional, ethical in all her actions, and so that shines through. She first joined the district in 2008. We stole her from the city of Placerville. She has served various positions here in the HR department, including serving as clerk to the board. Allison's positive team player approach has made her a great ambassador for the district, as evidenced by everybody's comments here. HR work's not always easy, yet Allison's ability to work collaboratively with our labor partners and just everybody across the organization has contributed to much of the success of the HR department. So thank you, Allison. While we'll miss Allison, certainly I'm a little nervous, forgive me, we wish her continued success in all your future endeavors and certainly happiness and good health. Thank you for your service, Allison.
Jim?
And I will say something very quickly,
Yes, please, Jennifer.
and this kind of snuck up on me.
That's because you said you were leaving.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk.
We want Jim to say it for you.
Yeah, I'll save it for
Thank you.
Allison. Just a few comments. You're just a incredibly professional and kind person that works for the district. You serve the district's interests and the employees' interest, advocating for both and trying to have that great balance. And we're going to miss you. All the great success. I have a little token of appreciation here.
Just a minute to say thank you to the district. It has been my pleasure and honor to serve all of you for the last 14 and a half years. It's been my joy. very difficult to leave you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Allison, you forgot about the best boss ever. Oh, you mean Jose.
Yes, Jose has been a very wonderful boss, Jim, and so have you. Thank you.
Allison, thank you. I believe there's lots of volunteer committee work throughout the community if you're not, you got to do like Alan says and get out of this state, but. Oh, Lincoln, well, we can get her over here for some of that work. But Allison, congratulations. Thank you very much. Well deserved. All right, next on the agenda is closed session. Do we have any public comments on closed session? How about? closed
President
session
Bierkamp,
comments?
thank you very much. We will be meeting in closed session on 2 matters. They're both listed on today's agenda as closed session items A and B with appropriate statutory references. I anticipate that the board's consideration of these 2 items will require at least 20 minutes, hopefully not more.
Mr. President, if I'm,
Yes,
I don't
sir.
want to forget when we come back from closed session, I had a request for staff. If we could do an information item sometime after the first of the year, but well before we start the cost of service process, where just an information item that will give us a review of the history of it, the ways it's been done in the past, the various methods used, the suggestions for using the consultant versus how it was done 12 years ago, all those, just basically an information item to review so we can all kind of know where we were at, where we're headed, and we can ask questions then at that time, rather than when we get into actually doing it.
Okay, just for clarity's sake, we'll be preparing a RFP to go out to a number of consultants, and then we'll have a team of employees reviewing that RFP on what's the best method and process. We'll be taking that RFP back to the board for approval so that they're fully informed of it. So I'm just trying to be clear what part.
What I'd like to see is before doing that, if we can have an information item so that we can discuss those things and hear from the staff what some of the goals are, how we did it before versus how we're thinking of doing it now. Just, I think, is a good background item to learn about it. And then also, if we have any suggestions or questions, we can give it to you before we get down the road of a formal RFP. If you like, we can go offline and I
Yeah,
can describe it more.
That would help me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Do we need to ask for any comments on closed session?
No, for
we're
the
good, okay.
purposes, we will close this meeting and reopen it. We won't come back prior to 10:45. However, it could be after.
All right, take a few minutes and we'll meet, probably will be. We'll meet in the back room in a few minutes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we've returned from closed session. Do we have a, hang on, I'm hanging.
Lori, can you hear us? It just said failed to detect a microphone, so I just wanted to make sure that we are recording and we.
You can hear me. I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you, Lori. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize.
All right, we've returned from closed session. Council, is there anything to report out of closed session?
There is. Thank you very much, President Bierkamp. The board met in closed session, and with regard to closed session, item A, I have one action to report. The board, on a motion made by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Day, voted unanimously to authorize the purchase of property located at 5614 Gilmore Road with the assessor's parcel number reflected on today's agenda for the purchase price of $230,000, subject to the general manager's delegated authority to determine that the purchase is in the district's best interest after the district completes environmental assessment. With regard to closed session B, the board met and conferred with council, provided direction, but took no reportable action, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Brian. With that,
For the review of assignments, we have a couple direction to staff, and we have one review of assignment made by Director Day, requesting that an information item outlining the cost service process be added to an upcoming board meeting prior to the process this cost of service process starting.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes, Lori?
Yes, I'm trying to remember, and please forgive me for my fuzziness. We haven't received a list of surplus properties yet, have we?
Director Anzini, thank you. I knew you would not let me go under the radar. I have been preparing materials as per your request, to update the board on our surplus property list. And so I am anticipating to meet with the board in January to provide the update on all of the district's surplus property and get direction from the board on how to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Anzini. Anything else from anybody? Very
Just
good.
Make sure that everyone looks at our tentatively scheduled items for our January board meeting.
Thank you for that assignment, ma'am. We are adjourned.
At 11:15 a.m.